those Diablo billionaire doors, and the ones that are on the McLaren as well, they're also billionaire doors. There's lots of billionaire doors.
Whose doors open like this. Not like this, not like this.
Hello and welcome to another installment of the Car Nerd Talks. I'm Jason Hassett, the Car Nerd, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a Mercedes creation which has the most incredible doors of any car in history as far as I'm concerned, even beating out those suicide doors and those Diablo billionaire doors, and the ones that are on the McLaren as well, they're also billionaire doors. There's lots of billionaire doors now.
Not like this.
But today we're going to be talking to you about the Mercedes 300 SL, and you probably know this car from the infamous photos and its infamous doors, the Gulwing doors. But before we get into that, we need to talk about the history of how this car came about and how it went into production. So today on the Car Nerd Talks, that's what we're going to be talking about. Anybody who knows anything about cars probably has heard of Mercedes-Benz. It would be hard not to. They are the Apple of the car industry until Rolls-Royce took over as being the Apple of the car industry. But before that, Mercedes-Benz with their S-Class were the height of it, and the 600 was the luxury car of choice for every leader, dictator in the world, unless they had a Hong Chi, which you can view here. Anyway. So you know Mercedes-Benz for luxury, but if you lived during the 90s, you probably knew the Mercedes team for Formula One as well. So that racing pedigree goes way back, and Carl Benz himself, the founder of the company, who by the way made the first ever internal combustion engine that ran on gasoline, or petrol as we call it back home, he was really into racing, and he wanted to produce cars that could go really fast. Because the thing about producing cars that go really fast, as Ford, Ferrari, Mercedes, any of these companies will tell you, people enjoy seeing these cars win, and people want to buy a bit of the victory, as you saw in Ford versus Ferrari.
Ferrari wins at Le Mans. People, they want some of that victory.
So Carl Benz had gone about creating racing cars in the earliest part of the 20th century, and some of his cars had gone on to create lap and speed records. One of his cars got to 141 miles an hour in 1913, which is insane. But then in 1926, Benz joined with Daimler and became Daimler-Benz. Later on, this became Mercedes-Benz because of the Mercedes P35, which was created by one of the investors and head of the company at the time, and Mercedes was named after his daughter, and it would become Mercedes-Benz. But their racing pedigree didn't stop there. So after 1926 and moving into the early 30s, there was the Mercedes Silver Arrows, and the Mercedes Silver Arrows were incredible. They were winning everything in the Grand Prix. They were destroying every other team, even their rivals Auto Union. And if you haven't heard of Auto Union, you also have, because they went on to become Audi. So they were destroying Auto Union, and one of their cars managed to reach 270 miles an hour in the 30s. How incredible is that? So then in the late 1930s, obviously there was a bit of a lull, and there was some political reasons. Some guy decided to try and take over the world. I'm guessing it was for some reality TV show, much like Trump today in America. He failed, don't worry, he failed, because if he hadn't, I'd be talking to you in the German right now instead of in the English. But he failed. But during that time, Mercedes had to get rid of its racing team and focus on creating trucks and aircraft engines for the war effort for the Nazis. That's who I was talking about, in case you didn't catch that before. That doesn't matter. But then in the 40s, they got back to producing good old cars in Germany, and they wanted to create something to really showcase what they could do. And in the early 50s, they started working on the 300 SL, at the time the W194. And the reason it's called 300 SL, and the reason all Mercedes now, you have a variant of SL, the sporty version. The SL stands for Superlect, which is super light in English. Not all of the new cars that bear the SL brand name are in fact super light, but this one was. They created an aluminium space frame, one of the first of its time, and this was 140 pounds The whole frame was 140 pounds. And that was a good thing because they placed quite an underpowered engine in it. A lot of the other teams had much bigger engines. They went for a 3-litre straight 6. But this 3-litre straight 6 produced 175 brake horsepower and 207 pounds-feet of torque, which allowed it to get to 163 miles an hour, which was quite fast. And they also built it with one of the first systems for full independent rear suspension and independent front suspension. So all 4 wheels were independent. And this was in 1952. You got to remember, not all cars in the US had independent rear suspension until the 2000s. Yeah, that's right. I'm talking to you, America. Get with the bloody times. These Germans were taking over the world. You won that war, couldn't change your suspension. What gives? Anyway, not important. So they put this engine in the car and they called it the SL, and the W194 300 SL was born, and it went on to win the 1952 24 Hours at Le Mans. And that's not the only race that it won. So after Hermann Lang and Fritz Reis won the 1952 Le Mans, they also won races at the Nuremberg Ring, the Pan American, and a few others like the this one in Italy. So this thing was really, really amazing. And then they stopped and decided that that was enough of racing with this car, and they decided to bring in the 300 SL, or at least they wanted to put it into production. But Mercedes weren't really interested in making a road-going version of their racing car. But this all changed in Stuttgart over a nice conversation with what I assume would have been bratwursts and, of course, some Schnudel. Schnudel, hey, I'm just making up words now. Even though I can speak a little bit of German, I don't know why I don't use real German. It doesn't matter, it's not important. Let's get back onto it. So a conversation struck up at this meeting in Stuttgart, and Max Hoffmann, who imported their cars from Germany to the States and sold them stateside in New York, decided to have a conversation with the new director of the company. And he said that there was a lot of wealthy people who loved performance cars in America, and he thought that it would be a good idea to bring these in. So he spoke to... So Hoffmann decided to have a conversation with the new general director of Mercedes, who was Fritz Konecki. And Fritz Konecki originally said, no. He said, nein danke. But Hoffmann went back to the States and he showed the car around, and little did Konecki know that he would be working on some of... So Hoffmann went back to the States and he started talking amongst everyone around that he could, and all of his general customers and whatnot, and then he called and talked to Konecki, and he said, Konecki, I need 1,000 of your Mercedes 300 SL. And he,
Du verspielst deine Zeit!
decided to agree because 1,000 Mercedes SLs would make quite a profit. And after that, they decided to start putting it into production. So with that 1,000 orders placed in New York, the Germans decided to get to work in Mercedes-Benz, and they wanted to make this thing something special. But there was a few changes that needed to be made because you can't just hand someone a racing car for various reasons. One, it's uncomfortable, and two, it probably isn't legal. So they started working around on this car and made some changes. They made a really poor change, which I don't understand, but anyway. And by that I mean, they did what I call a reverse AMG. They took the engine, the 3-litre straight 6 that was in the racing car, and they tuned it all the way down to 150 horsepower. Now it still had around 200 torques, but why tune it down? That doesn't make sense to me, but I'm sure they had reasons. However, it could still reach 146 miles an hour and do that in 9.3 seconds, which doesn't sound like much today. But bear in mind, those figures made it the fastest road car that you could purchase in its day. The other thing they did was they brought in Hans Triple, a German industrial engineer. Now you probably know this guy from another video I made, which you'll see up here, who made the Amphi car, an absolutely terrible car. So from my video the other day, I told you that this guy created 3 things: 2 awful, 1 good. And by 2 awful, I mean he created the Amphi car, And in the 1940s, he worked with the Nazi Party to take over Bugatti and get it to create aircraft engines. But he also created the Gulwing doors for the 300 SL. And for that, I think all is forgiven because they are absolutely beautiful. Now, if you look at these Gulwing doors, you've probably seen them before in photos, and if not, you're probably young enough to be saying, wait a minute, so Tesla stole these? Well, not exactly. Tesla have Falcon wing doors, which I know sounds ridiculous, but they have Falcon wing doors on their Model X, which I guess took inspiration from the Gulwing doors, but they open a bit more, I think a bit less elegantly, to be honest. It looks like two things hanging as it comes up, but they did it for a reason, and it's functional and it's cool. And if you're on drivetribe.com right now watching this, please go to the poll below or tell me in the comments on YouTube which you think are cooler, the Mercedes SL 300 Gulwing doors or the Falcon wing doors from the Tesla. So Mercedes had done it. They had produced the fastest road car you could buy, and they went in 1954 to the New York Auto Show and they decided to unveil it there to the people who were already waiting for their orders thanks to Senior Max Hoffman. And it was a hit. Everybody loved this thing, and you could buy one of these at the time for $6,995 with the Gulwings. Or if you were slightly insane or Richard Hammond, you could buy it with the top down for an extra $4,000, and that version was called the Roadster. So the Coupe was the one with the Gulwing doors, or the Roadster was the one with the Cabriolet, and the Roadster was $4,000 more expensive without the Gulwing doors. Go figure, I don't know. But anyway, over the course of the next 6 to 7 years, they would sell 3,400 of these worldwide, and it was a major success for such a sports car at the time. And yeah, it's class. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, whether it be here on YouTube or whether you're watching this on Drive Tribe. Give it an old bump below, and don't forget to hit that poll and tell me which you prefer, the doors, or comment below on YouTube. Oh, and one last thing, please subscribe. If you don't, then you're basically Hans AAA to me. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you tomorrow.